People's Cat, yabbing on about freedom. The end, part 2. Okay, so what for me is freedom? For me, freedom is an idealized state that no human being can actually attain if the human being has ever got any extra input from the external environment. So a complete blind, deaf, no tactile sense human being that's completely enclosed within themselves and has never had input to set them controls, internal moral controls, would be entirely free. And I think that's a good thing. I think freedom of anything, freedom from anything, has a price. Somebody else's liberty, somebody else's abilities are always going to be, just moving a cat here, are always going to be affected adversely by your liberty and freedom. Which is easy to say, so why have any liberties at all? The truth of it is that human beings enjoy the fake sense of feeling free. A lot of Americans feel very proud that they have liberty in the Constitution and that their government and armed forces are fighting to protect their personal liberty. Whereas the truth of it is that almost all of the politicians are actually paid spokespeople for corporations, and the population is there as a useful mass for labour and for consumption, and needs to be controlled, and is being controlled, and increasingly controlled. Well, Hooples, you say, what about Paradise Canada? We have our human rights laws enshrined, and we do have a sort of a constitution. The Queen of England can overwrite the Constitution, which kind of tells you all you need to know about a Constitution. Human rights are the same as the American inalienable rights. They're very subjective, and they do change over time. And they will change from where they are now. So what does being in a state of freedom mean for me? It means that I know that I'm not free. It means that I'm conscious of which liberties I'm allowed by the government, by other people, by my family, by my friends, by myself, and even by you. Up to a certain degree, there's a certain amount of control exerted upon me as the video host by my own subs. I'm careful about what I say about human-caused climate change. If you haven't seen Canadian Prepper's latest video, please watch it. It's pretty much bang on right. And then go to the comments section and ask yourself, what type of human being denies science to the point of unsubbing somebody for a 5-minute video that they've subbed for a long time? They cannot cope with a different perspective. Just don't watch the video. Give it a thumbs down. Feel strong and empowered by that. But it's interesting when people talk about freedom in many parts of the world, including Canada. What they mean is freedom to do what they wish to do, and freedom that other people have to do what they want them to do. But as soon as people do things that they do not want them to do, freedom comes to a crashing halt and liberty comes in. You're not at liberty to do this, that and the other. In my opinion, and my opinion as a human being is the only opinion that matters. Isaac Asimov is a personal hero of mine. Not only did he write fantastic sci-fi, which is now dated. It's funny because in the Foundation series, which I loved as a kid, when I read it now, all I see is the patriarchy and the smoking all through the book. Things change, cultures change. He wrote the 3 laws of robotics. These are the 3 laws of robotics. A robot may not injure a human or through inaction allow a human to come to harm. A robot must obey the orders given it by human beings unless the orders would conflict with the first law. A robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. Okay, you're saying, Rupert, why are you going on about robots? Are you saying that we're robots? Yeah, I am actually. A large part of what we do and say is unconscious, and it's unconscious programming from deep within our neural network in our brain. And I'm not going to argue that in this video, but I believe that to be true, and I have the freedom to believe that. So I'm changing this. A human must not injure a human being, or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. That's my first law if you want to have freedom. What this means is, no, you can't throw away plastic stuff into the ocean or into the garbage. No, you cannot withhold charitable donations to people who are in time of need. No, you cannot support a politician who actively will hurt, harm other human beings, irregardless of nationality. Number 2, a human must obey the needs of other human beings, except where such needs would conflict with the first law. Yeah, bang on right, we should. We should look at the needs of other people and put them first and foremost. As an atheist, I believe this strongly. Christians and Muslims and Buddhists and Jewish people out there, and Sikhs also, I believe, would believe that to be a strong truth. If a other human being is in need and it does not harm you or harm anyone else to help them with their need, you have an obligation to do it. Robotic Law 3, bit troublesome, this one. A human must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second laws. Now, I agree with that as well. My grandfather was a great man. In September, 3rd of September 1939, went to the police station and registered as a conscientious objector. He was a shipyard worker and was an old and would have not fought anyway, but he wanted to register his objection to war with Germany. So because of that, he actually worked in the shipyard and then had to work as a fireman as well. He was a brave man. What his take was, and I agree with it, and you're not going to like this, but I apologize. If you put on the uniform of a country or a corporation and go out there to kill other people wearing uniforms, you are fulfilling the institution's desire to restrict their liberty and their freedom. If everybody turned around and said, up yours, I joined the military to protect and serve humanity, I am not going to go and fight other people, what a wonderful world we'd have. All the politicians could rant and rage. But you know what? If the North Koreans had the ability, had the liberty and freedom to say, up yours, Kim Jong. And if the American troops had the opportunity to say, up yours, Trump, we're going not to fight and kill other human beings unless they seek to kill and fight us first, the world might be a better place. Utopic, but there you go. However, what the interesting thing with this one is that if you have a situation where other human beings are actually threatening and trying to harm other human beings, the third law would then allow you to fight and kill them. If those human beings had needs and the needs were being ignored by their government, you would have the right to go in there and enforce a reduction of liberty on that government to control its population and harm them. So yeah, I think those 3 laws, translated for me, work for me as a framework to defend freedom for myself. Do not say, speak, do anything which will harm another human being. Do not do, speak or say anything that will destroy the ability of another human being to fulfill reasonable needs. Kind of a tough one, eh? Be interested to see how people are going to argue with that. The only argument with it is like, that's garbage, human beings are just animals and you'll have to slaughter them all. Well, yeah, I'll slaughter anybody trying to harm me, and I may well slaughter them if I feel I can if they're trying to harm others. But it'd be nice if people just didn't. Freedom. The philosophy of freedom. Now, this is interesting. I found this and I want to share this because I think it's kind of important. Rudolf Steiner, who died in 1925, wrote a really dense book on the philosophy of freedom, which I have not read. I do not read every dense book I can find, but I have read extracts from it, and it's kind of an interesting one. He explored the fundamental nature of human beings by looking at our freedom. by accepting that an action of which the agent does not know why he performs it cannot be free. But asking what happens when a person becomes conscious of his or her motives for acting, he proposes, one, that through introspection, observation, we can become conscious of the motivations of all of our actions. Maybe it's therapy here. It's very difficult to actually really get to grips with why you do and don't do what you do on everything. But it's certainly a worthy task. That the sole possibility of human freedom, if it exists at all, must be sought in awareness of the motives of our actions. Well, absolutely. Canadian Prepper just did a video on Arctic ice disappearing. And it's going to happen soon, probably September 2019, hopefully September 2020. Human society, human civilization in North America and the Western world will collapse within weeks to about 10 years after the Blue Ocean event occurs in the Arctic, according to most reputable scientists. Not according to a lot of clickbait nonsense on YouTube, but Canadian Prepper is doing a great service to his population by bringing that up to them as something that needs to be thought about. And even if rejected, you need to be planning for it. That's what preppers do, right? We think of unlikely events and we mitigate the effect of them on ourselves and our family. However, it seems that climate change is a complete block to a lot of so-called preppers because they're too inane to be able to say, we might be wrong. They, the scientists, might be right. We better take some notice of human-caused climate change and do what we can reasonably within our belief that it's not true to mitigate possible effects of it if it occurs. No. These guys go, I'm on something you! And then coming up with the most bizarre stuff, like read the comments section. Did you know, according to some people who have claimed to be preppers, that sea ice is called sea ice because it has salt in it? That's just one of many examples. Absolutely beautiful. So I'm going to use an example of gun control. It's a trigger point. Red button trigger issue. Everyone can have the freedom to own a gun if they can afford to buy it. Money's an interesting one. Everyone has the liberty from interference to own any gun and do whatever they wish for it. So having the freedom to have a gun does not make you free. Having the ability to use the gun however you want without external control makes you free. Obviously, true freedom is not a great idea if you look at guns. Well, you might think it is, but personally I think it's not. Because I don't think that human beings are actually that reliable, especially in stress situations, into thinking morally and rationally. So liberty is what I would support with guns and anything else in terms of freedom. Liberty means some controls on gun ownership, type and use. Now this can be controlled by the state, by peer pressure, whatever. I don't particularly care. But you have to have some control over the ownership and use of guns. If your stance is everybody has the right in the Constitution of the United States to own a gun, what you're saying is that everybody has the mental and emotional capacity to be trusted to use the gun within controls. Because if they don't have any controls to do whatever they like, there's going to be a lot of dead bodies. However, what about freedom from fear of gun violence? If you believe that everybody has the right to be free from the fear of gun violence, what you would advocate is an absolute, complete, total ban on any gun ownership, including gun ownership by the police and the military, I guess. So again, the extremes of freedom can appear very, very senseless. We need liberty. We cannot have freedom. Liberty has to restrict freedom. If you do not have liberty to do certain things, it means that you have the freedom to do whatever you want. So my freedom might limit your freedom and vice versa. So how do we decide whose freedom trumps whose? Well, I think mine's more important. You think yours is more important. Well, no, it isn't. What you would do is you'd look at moral, ethical, religious, cultural, legal reasons to get to a grounding where both parties' liberty is restricted, but both parties feel free to exercise some degree of control within that constriction. Okay, so that's probably upset people, but there you go. I find gun control is not a rational topic for a lot of people. It should be. You should be a rational human being and be able to reject what I say or accept what I say, or in between, without becoming emotionally triggered. But anyway, an American president who's now dead called Franklin Delano Roosevelt said in a State of the Union address on January the 6th, 1941, the following: "We look forward to a world founded upon 4 essential human freedoms. The first is freedom of speech and expression, everywhere in the world. The second is freedom of every person to worship God in his own way, everywhere in the world. The third is freedom from want, which translated into world terms means economic understandings which will secure to every nation a healthy peacetime life for its inhabitants, everywhere in the world. The fourth is freedom from fear, which translated into world terms means a worldwide reduction of armaments to such a point and in such thorough fashion that no nation will be in a position to commit any act of physical aggression against any neighbour, anywhere in the world. This is no vision of a distant millennium. It's a definitive basis for a kind of world attainable in our own time and generation." Well, whatever. Didn't happen, did it? Could have happened, but it takes guts, it takes courage. True freedom can only be attained by courage. The courage to say no to the military-industrial complex. The courage to say no to people who believe in a strong military. A strong military is only required if other people have strong militaries. He also said, Roosevelt was a great guy, "There is nothing mysterious about the foundations of a healthy and strong democracy." None of this rubbish, America's a republican from Roosevelt. It's a democracy. Should be a democracy, otherwise you have an imbalance of power and inequity. The basic things expected by our people of their political and economic systems are simple. They are equality of opportunity for youth and for the others, jobs for those who can work, security for those who need it, the ending of special privilege for a few, the preservation of civil liberties for all, the employment of fruits of scientific progress in a wider and constantly rising standard of living. These are the simple, basic things that must never be lost sight of in the turmoil and unbelievable complexity of our modern world. The inner and abiding strength of our economic and political systems is dependent upon the degree to which they can fulfill these expectations.